Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and I struggled a lot with what to talk about in today's video. There's just not a whole lot going on in the news, and I've been making a lot of Witcher content, as many of you know, but this one article from CBR really stood out to me. When I first saw it, I fully expected to go full on, destroy this thing, break it down, as I've done in several other CBR videos, where it's just like these people have no idea what they're talking about. This isn't the way to go about things. But this specific Witcher article comes at it from an interesting perspective, a fan's perspective, and while it doesn't argue something I 100% agree with, I can see where it's coming from, and this author is logical, this author is being reasonable, it kind of not insults Netflix, but is critical of Netflix to a degree that I can respect, and so I have to give a shout out to CBR. While their conclusion and a few of their finer points are things that I don't personally agree with, this article comes at it from a perspective that I can at least respect. So I have to give them props for that. And that is this article, How the Witcher Can Be Saved by Ciri. Of course, when you see this headline, especially with the previous articles that CBR has had, such as Yennefer's better anyway, so it doesn't matter that Henry Cavill is gone, you can be within the realm of possibility, completely reasonably think, oh my god, this is going to be horrific. What are they going to say about this story and about Ciri? Funnily enough, they actually do it in a very interesting way and have an interesting theory that I can get behind. Ciri is my favorite Witcher character. I love her development. So yes, she can be a pivotal point in the series. But at the end of the day, Geralt is the main character, so he should still be the focus of it. So that's where I think a disagreement happens. But it's from an interesting perspective nonetheless, and not from a, hey, fans are bigots perspective. So I have to call it out as being pretty cool from CBR. Pretty cool from CBR. But without the star power that Henry Cavill brought to the show, some of the show's biggest flaws may become a little less forgivable. A little critical of Netflix. I really like that they're being very reasonable, not really going full me, ham-fisted against Netflix, but still not giving them a pass and saying, oh, it's perfect. Why would Henry Cavill want to leave this amazing show? It's perfect in every way. A little bit of give and take, and I can respect that. Without Cavill's passion for the books and his portrayal of Geralt, many have not hinted, straight up said, that they do not intend to continue watching the series, especially after it was reported that Cavill left the show because it deviated from the source material too extensively. And that's a big reason why I checked out of the show in season 2. I hate it so very much, season 2. Season 1, I can at least respect people's desire to enjoy it. There's enough there that my dislike for season 1 is primarily from a book fan's perspective, but season 2 I think is objectively horrible, irrespective of the lore deviations. That show is just so bad in season 2. But continuing, in fact, according to former Witcher writer Bo DeMeo, some of the members of the Netflix writers room actively dislike the source material and the CD Projekt Red games. So they're laying out the actual evidence, and so that's really good. They're not ignoring it like a lot of other articles mainstream and access medias have. So they're being like, hey, people have a good reason for wanting to check out with Henry Cavill, and maybe with Henry Cavill gone, people will look at it more realistically and see those flaws that they didn't see before. They were blinded by the star power of Henry Cavill, which I get because he's phenomenal in the role. So what is The Witcher's true story? So this just goes over what Ciri does in the books for a little while, in specifically books 3 and 4, which do heavily focus on her, but Geralt still has a very strong story. And they argue that the Isle of Thanet coup, which is how the second book, Time of Contempt, ends, should be a central focus of the end of this next season and be something that continues through line through the show. And I just don't think they can adapt it accurately after everything that they've done at this point to Blood of Elves in season 2. I just don't think the setup is there to make the Isle of Thanet coup make any sense, but they do have a reasonable perspective. After that coup, Ciri is transported down to the deserts of Nilfgaard and begins a solo mission trying to get back up to the Northern Realms. And Geralt at the same time puts together a posse of heroes to go and try to rescue her through a war zone of Nilfgaardians and Northern Empires. Book 3 is probably my favorite in the entire series, so season 4 should have been my favorite season going into it, but that's never going to be Netflix. In a perfect world, this sounds really cool. Maybe a spin-off or some episodes that focus specifically on Ciri. That would be really cool from my perspective because I love Ciri. But you still need Geralt's side of things with the band of heroes going at it. And funnily enough, Yennefer's barely in those specific books. And really, a lot of the rest of the series, she's not in it very much after the coup at Thanet. she's a very minor character going forward. Not super minor, still probably the third most main character, but very, very, very minor in comparison to the other two, which is interesting. And Netflix is never going to allow that. So they're going to change this whole story just to make her the central figure, as they've done in both seasons 1 and 2. But they do come at it from a fan's perspective. I need to keep harping on that because they do accurately retell series events, her journey that she goes on in those books, especially with the rats and with the bounty hunter that was after her. She has a really cool story that I love, and with Tawny Owl and eventually Vilgefortz coming back, there's a really cool story there that I get where he's coming from, the author of this article, saying, hey, maybe we should focus on that really cool story for Ciri because Henry Cavill's gone. Maybe just shift the focus to her. While I still think you need The Witcher, it's a reasonable perspective to take and one that I can get because of how amazing Ciri's storyline is in these specific books. So don't have anything wrong with him coming at it from this perspective. Goes on, the show should shift the spotlight from Geralt and place it squarely on Ciri. Yes, that does mean turning Geralt into somewhat of a side character, which is actually what the novels did most of the time. That I don't agree with. Geralt is still very much the main character of the books, but Ciri is the central figure, if that makes any sense. So I disagree with the conclusion, but the reasoning and the evidence provided and the knowledge of the books is something that I can really get behind. And this is just trying to make a solution the best of a bad situation. This article does mention, hey, best case scenario, we kept Henry Cavill, we kept all that stuff, but in this specific situation, maybe Ciri would be the best way to go forward. And I get that. I can understand the thought process there. And it's not because of feminism in this article. It's not because of anything like that. Just Ciri has a really, really cool story during this era. So it could be really cool. And then for the final seasons, kind of morph it back into a ensemble cast. I get it. I really get it. And so I can't be upset at this. I can't tear this apart as a Shield BR article like I normally would. So again, may disagree with the conclusion, but some really cool stuff that they come up with. Netflix needs a new approach. As long as the show hits certain points in the series arc, the rest can be entirely invented. Now that I definitely don't agree with. I think it needs to be more faithful to the books than just a few major points. And this is one of the main paragraphs where we diverge entirely, near 100%. Because yes, I don't think or need 100% lore accuracy, 100% adaptation purity, but it needs to be a little bit more than a few central events. Audience have already seen how well that approach has worked in fantasy shows such as House of the Dragon or The Rings of Power. Now that's when we really fell off the reservation here because Rings of Power was not good and it was not a good adaptation. So bringing that into compare to this is just a recipe for disaster in my opinion. So that's really the main point of this article that I wholly and fully disagree with this author. Both of which were constructed from areas of lore that have not been thoroughly explored in the source material. That's not comparable to the main Witcher series, though. It's very comparable to The Witcher Blood Origin, though. And that's coming out in a month to the day, actually. A month to the day from today. And that's going to be a good comparison to those shows. I don't get why this author is trying to compare the House of the Dragon and Rings of Power to the main Witcher show when there's not really a through line there. There's actually a book to adapt. It's not amorphous lore. It can work for The Witcher. The story should focus on Ciri's transformations during her travels with the rats and her fight with Barnard. Still, I love that story and I get that perspective. It's just Geralt's still the main character and we need Henry Cavill for that, so the show is dead. It's that simple, but this person is trying to cope out a successful solution to Henry Cavill leaving, and that I can at least understand. Leave Geralt of Rivia and Yennefer Vengerberg's perspectives to the imagination of the viewers, instead of trying to loosely adapt it. The show has already shown that it is unable to adapt everyone's story without losing all the crucial nuances to them. I love that. It's being very, very critical of Netflix. I can respect that. Focus on Ciri would likely compel the series to capture these nuances and explore Ciri's growth in ways it hasn't so far. That is something that needs to happen regardless. Ciri, especially in Season 2, came across as a block of wood to me and was just too good at everything too fast. Yes, Ciri is above average, but it still took her months to learn how to fight at a basic level. The show had her master the obstacle course in a matter of days. Whereas something like that in the show canon would have taken a normal Witcher boy months. That's not an okay comparison to make. But if they really drove into her development that she has in the books, I would love that. Because she goes through one of the most impressive character arcs in literature history, at least modern fantasy in my opinion. because where she starts out as a spoiled 10-year-old brat to the self-sacrificing legend she is at the end of The Witcher 3 is an amazing transition. And we haven't seen any of that because in the TV show, she's just like, bow before me. I'm awesome. I'm badass. What are you guys doing? And she never cracks a facial expression. So this needs to happen regardless of her being the focus of the series going forward. So focusing on that nuance is a good perspective to take. The show can still be faithful and unique. It just needs to focus on the real heart of the story. That's Ciri. And I do agree with that to a certain extent. Ciri is the heart. She is the central figure of the story. Geralt's still the main character. So I just had to praise CBR. I do it so rarely, but I just have to do it with this article. The headline is very, very misleading and made me think that this was going to be a disaster in the making. But it was a good article from a reasonable perspective with reasonable motivations and logical conclusions. Just a conclusion that I don't necessarily agree with. And that's okay. As long as it's respectful, not calling the fans any sort of names, I can respect this person's opinion wholeheartedly. Now, coming in tandem with this, the petition for Henry Cavill to be returned to the role of Geralt while the writers are fired crossed 250,000 signatures last night. That is phenomenal. This is well higher than I expected it to be, and it's still going up. It's still going up faster and faster. More people are signing it, and as I've said before, I don't think this will actually do anything, but it is an interesting gauge nonetheless. And to end off, just checking in with the Witcher Blood origin ratios. We've got 308,000 views on the Witcher's YouTube channel with 16,000 dislikes. That is massive. That's a terrible ratio. And it's all Henry Cavill. It's all those jokes that we've seen in comments before. Keep Henry, replace the writers. It's that simple. As soon as you come out and say, oh yeah, we hate the source material, you've immediately disqualified yourself for the job entirely. And now this is the main Netflix version of the trailer, and it's at 2.1 million. That's a little bit higher than the last time I checked, with 138,000 dislikes. This is really impressive to see the fan base of The Witcher standing up in so many different ways, and access to mainstream media, at least in this instance, being critical and being a little bit nuanced and from a fan perspective in an article is something very strange to see, and hopefully it shows a shift in the entire Witcher culture and the Witcher show at Netflix to something more towards quality. I think you need a reboot season 2 at minimum. I prefer a full reboot, kind of doing the same thing that Henry Cavill looks like he's going to be doing for Superman. A hard reboot, keeping Henry Cavill, and that's about it. That's what I think needs to be done for the Witcher show as well, because there is so much potential here with him in that role. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon.
Hey, yo, are you feeling what I'm doing up in here? Oh, I know you are. Do you miss all the good, compelling stories that we used to get back in Hollywood that they ain't putting down no more? Oh, I know you missing it. So check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues, baby. Book 1, Down in Flames. Book 2, Apocalypse Then. These are currently on sale. What are you waiting for? Get your hands on them. And we got Book 3, Kill the Dark, is coming down the pipeline. Just wait for all the good stuff that's dropping. You ain't gonna be disappointed, fam.